Hi, welcome to another episode of Real Estate Unleashed. I am your co-host, Bridget Quinn. You can find me on all social media, B Quinn Realtor.
And I'm Regan Hildebrand, your co-host. You can find me on social media at Realtor Regan. How's it going, Bridget?
It's going. Another day, another dollar.
Another day, another dollar. And
Dollar.
a few more and a few more changes to the old podcast setup here.
Yes, hopefully,
So
hopefully what you're seeing now is a little bit different view and a little bit more entertaining, engaging, I suppose.
Yep. We're always, like we said, continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
My years of working in the world of a little Lean Six Sigma.
Developmental needs.
Yeah. I never got a belt, yellow or otherwise.
I'm green.
Your green belt?
I'm green.
Okay. We had the informal training, unsanctioned training in my old job.
Yeah.
But so speaking of continuous improvement, we're going to focus a little bit today on continuously improving the eye of both us as agents and for consumers.
It's certainly a skill you have to hone. You have to really sort of train your eye, as you say, to look for certain things.
When you're looking. So, we want to kind of touch on, I guess, today, like what it means if you're out there and you're touring homes as a home buyer, what you're supposed to be looking for, right?
Well, especially if this is your first time purchasing a home, it's going to be hard to figure out what do you even want to look for or what you should know.
Yeah. That whole idea of going in blind a little bit, I think, is intimidating to folks. Or the other side of it too is that I see a lot when you're actually touring homes is that it's easy to walk in and be amazed by the surface level stuff, right? And fail to really see behind the curtain a little bit. Yeah. Pull back the curtain.
What's behind curtain number one?
That's right. Pay no attention to the cat urine stains underneath the carpet that have been covered by the rug.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. Of course, on our side is when we're listing agents, it's easy to want to be the person that comes in and says to the seller, "Hey, cover this up."
Right.
Yeah. Let's not get too much attention on
for sure.
on this piece. But then when you're on the buy side, to kind of flip the script, dig a little deeper. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. It's, if you take the time and you notice certain aspects of it or you find certain flaws, then you can better prepare if it's something that you want to, take care of immediately. Maybe it's a low cost, just easy fix, or something that is going to be more of a long-term, long haul sort of expenditure.
Right. And I think when you're talking about like things like that is the little things are easy stuff. Maybe it needs paint. Maybe there's a few too many nail holes left in the walls.
Air filters just are dirty from before.
Yeah,
just little stuff.
It needs a little bit more of a deep clean in the bathrooms, those kind of things. But the big stuff, the big thing that I think trips people up is that they don't see maybe right away is what's going on foundation wise, what's going on up in the attic, if there's an attic space that's accessible, the exterior of the home.
Big one. Grading outside of the home, how, if it's kind of inconvenient, but it's also a great time when it's raining, maybe not a downpour, but it's always good to, if it is raining, to check out the if there are any leaks, is that, backyard flooded or just what have you. So
or the gutter's so clogged that all the water is like a Niagara Falls over the edge,
over the top of it rather than down.
Yeah. That's a good point. I remember showing a house during a torrential downpour, and of course I keep an umbrella and everything in the car, one of the really big ones that covers a party of 4 or 5. Helps you look like a hero. But we got out of the car, and of course water's flying over the edge. The gutters aren't doing a thing because they're so clogged. And then to your point, with the grading, you can see where the water is standing up against the house.
The runoff, yeah.
And we're not licensed home inspectors or general contractors, but one of the things that you always want to be mindful of is that water up against the house is your enemy.
Yes, it is.
And
or like brick, like if you have the brick under the windows, it should be tilted, forward, not backwards. And I've seen some of those, if it's tilted backwards, guess where that water's going to go? Straight towards the house rather than away from it. So
yeah, the little things like that if you're just in love with the house because of photos that are magical, then yeah, you have to dig in a little deeper when you're actually at the showing, the visit.
Well, and I think if you really like the house, sometimes you tend to overlook those things. You'd be like, oh, it's not a problem. Oh, it's not an issue, but it has the potential to go that route.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be, you have to think about what is worst case scenario. And for a home, worst case scenario is that becomes a money pit.
Right. Or it's somewhere that you don't really love as much as you think you did because of issues.
Not just with the house itself.
Right.
Yeah. Neighbors.
Oh, that's a big one.
You can't pick the house up and move it, and you can't.
Right. Well, I mean, my suggestion is, if, maybe it's a day or two before you get to see a house, do a drive-by. Drive-by in the morning, afternoon, in the evening, on the weekends to kind of see what's happening because, different people have different schedules. If you're looking for maybe a neighborhood that has more kids, I would say weekend. If there's somebody out and about, you'll be able to tell that more so. So drive-bys are the good thing for the neighbors.
Yep. I had clients that moved into a house in a non-HOA neighborhood because that's what they wanted. And we could obviously go down the rabbit hole of HOAs versus non-HOAs.
Which I believe we did on episode 2.
That's right. Yeah, if we flash way back.
Attack of the HOA.
Yeah, and it haunts people a lot because HOAs have such a sinister reputation. But then my clients bought in a neighborhood without that HOA, and they called me 9 months later and said, we can't take it. The neighbors across the street are having parties until 1 a.m. And they're not violating any noise ordinances, so you can't exactly call the police.
No. But
there's cars everywhere.
Yeah, that's what we talked about before with HOA in particular is, there's pluses and minuses to having it, and there's pluses and minuses to not having it. And that is one of those that's
usually, it sneaks up on people. So there's that, there's, of course, do you have farmland behind you? And here in North Carolina, that's not that uncommon. People don't think that there's cows in Mecklenburg County, but there are.
There's cattle behind my neighborhood on one side of it.
Yep.
So, and I noticed that
across the street from me as well.
In those homes, because your backyard's right up against the pasture, sometimes those people have more mice. It's maybe more mice, more snakes come in, and that's nature.
Yeah, and I grew up in a very rural area with farms of all types around me. Dairy and chicken farms were the most common.
There's a lot of those in Stanley County.
And if you don't like the smell of manure, you might want to roll the windows down when you go out looking at houses. That's
smell is a big one to do. I mean, there's certain areas around Cabarrus County that's known for having certain smells.
The landfill
areas.
is
Mount Trashmore, I like to call it.
Yeah.
In the summer, I feel sorry for some of those neighborhoods because it's pretty strong.
That's a good point. You buy a house in
my house, I can smell the old S&D coffee.
Yeah.
Whatever it is now.
Yeah, it's changed names. It's got the elephant logo now.
It's nice.
Yeah, I don't mind the smell of S&D, and this for those who are not familiar with Concord, the coffee plant is a big employer here, and when they're roasting, depending on which way the wind blows, you're either going to catch a fresh roasted coffee,
or
if the wind's blowing a really unusual way in the middle of summer, you might catch Mount Trashmore, as you said.
It's Mount Trashmore.
But yeah, those are the things that you can't predict.
What's some of the things, like when you go into a house, what are some things that you like to look for in particular?
Yeah, and
just with experience.
So the big thing is, if you're going out and you're going to see houses with an agent, you as the buyer, I encourage, go look around, enjoy your experience, just kind of touring the house, getting a feel of everything that's going on. And then me as the agent, I'm going to hang back and do my little picking up, underneath the rugs to see, are we hiding any stains in the carpet? Are we hiding, something behind a door that's, or just furniture is weirdly positioned, oddly placed. And then little things like just turning on the faucet in the sink.
That's one of my favorite ones to do, is bathroom pressure and kitchen faucet pressure. I mean, some of that could be like, even in our own house, the faucet, like the aerator that's inside to try to filter it, it doesn't allow the appropriate amount of water to come through. So Tony yanked that out. Now it's like,
I was going to say, the handyman's spouse will rip that little valve out in a heartbeat. But yeah, I've sold houses that were on well water, and wells can be anywhere from a couple gallons per minute to 30 gallons per minute of flow. And if you don't know that going in, you might be disappointed to find out that your water pressure isn't what you want. So
sometimes temperature too, honestly.
Yep.
Try to turn it to hot to see how long it takes.
Correct. Yeah, to see if they've got an old tank water heater, then it might take longer than the newer instant.
Or the energy efficient ones, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, precisely. So those little things, and mostly just looking for stuff that we as agents know that can be hidden or overlooked.
I like to look for obvious problems. Like, again, as you say, like the buyers like to take their time to enjoy the house and, see what works for them. Whereas I'm looking up in the ceilings, I'm looking on the walls. Is there any major cracks, or, is it something just like nail pops, or, can I tell that there's uneven flooring, foundation issues?
Yeah.
I mean, if you get an older house, it's going to be up and down some to an extent, but there's a certain amount that's okay. Sometimes I even heard some agents will bring like
a marble
or a little ball or a little quarter just to kind of roll.
Set it in the ground, see, or on the floor, and see which way it goes. Speaking of things to take with, and I mentioned taking an umbrella when it rains. There's a lot of things that we as agents should keep in our cars at all times, and umbrella is one of them.
Toilet paper.
That's
for another reason.
That's just if you're out showing 10 houses and not all of them are well stocked.
I have stories about that.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, the necessities of keeping yourself in the lap of luxury. But also a flashlight, a very good flashlight to look in crawl spaces. When we're looking under crawl space as an agent, we are not contractors, we are not home inspectors. But there's certain things, though, that you, as the buyer, should be informed of. And I'm always going to open up the crawl space if it's accessible, assuming that it is a crawl space.
Hopefully not the ones that are like this big.
Not a 6-inch crawl space. I'm not fitting under that. But I'm going to open it up, shine a flashlight in there, and see things like, is there insulation in the flooring? And if there is it falling down?
Right. I smell.
Smells? Yeah. Things aren't just visual. Does it smell damp and musty? And then also, does it have a vapor barrier, which is just a sheeting of plastic meant to keep the moisture that's in the ground from evaporating and then making the joist and the insulation damp. So, or standing water has the lack of gutters or clogged gutters cause that water to then run into the crawl space.
That's especially important too in basement homes, which we don't have a lot of, but there's some that have like really large, that you can fully walk up crawl spaces or certain basements areas. So you definitely want to look at water issues on that one. Efflorescence is it's a big word.
It's a big word, especially in Scrabble. And if you have efflorescence, which is just the water in the crawl space or in the basement that's evaporated and left behind, it's usually like calcium or something that's just dried there. And if that's in that crawl space or basement, then you have a water problem or had a water problem. and what has the current homeowner done to address it. So yeah, we look for those things. I carry a flashlight. I even carry now, which might be a little over the top, a little meter that checks for voltage, and then also I know there's a technical term for that little meter, but anyway, just check to see if something's live or dead, if it's got current going through it. And then also a little thing that checks outlets to tell me if the outlet is working, is it got, a ground, is it reversed, things like that. So just little stuff that can check in older homes. We have a lot of older homes around here.
We do.
So, and I know you've sold some historic homes in the past too. And the inspections can be lengthy, but what can we do as agents to get in front of it?
Well, especially if it's an older home that has been remodeled, I like to also pull permits to see if there's anything been done, or see what's been done or whatever.
And sometimes we get lucky and we can pull that up on a phone or iPad, or sometimes it's hey, I know you like the house, let's do some research before we submit an offer.
Right.
Yeah. Which thankfully now in this market, we actually have a little time to breathe. We're not writing the offer before we step foot back out of the door.
Right. And just we don't have the time frame now where we're just, don't worry about it, just get it, because.
Yeah, it's the only thing left. Things are giving us that ability to dive in and look again, what's behind this curtain, what's underneath this rug.
Well, too, like if you're looking at things, certain neighborhoods have like easements from. We have one from the power company on our land that Duke Energy just runs through.
And Colonial Pipeline runs a huge gas line through North Carolina, which goes through Charlotte. And plenty of times I have seen easements, you have the yellow stakes in the ground that mark where there's a gas line. And I think people may overlook that sometimes. That prevents you from building on top of that. Or if it's power lines, like you said.
They have to have access, like Duke Energy can come in anytime on ours and do what they need to do or trim back things. So. Yeah.
And of course, some people don't want to be near those high voltage power lines. So, just looking up sometimes can open up eyes. And I've been on the other side. I've bought houses, of course, and you tend to want to see the good stuff and you don't look up or look down. You're just looking straight ahead. And that's...
Well, when you find the house, you're so excited about it, you don't want to really take the time to open your eyes and really do that deep dive look. Yeah,
it's almost like ignorance is bliss, rose-colored glasses. And we don't depend on the listing agents or the sellers to tell us every little thing. Obviously, it's not in their best interest, unless it's a defect that they know of, then they have to disclose it. Material fact or defect, those things have to be disclosed, but sometimes it's just preferential.
Well, and two, if the listing itself says, hey, this is a new HVAC, guess what? I'm going to look to make sure it actually is a new HVAC.
Yep.
And I've had some people that have had it listed as that, and when you look at it, no, it's like 14, 15 years old.
And that
is not new.
Our January North Carolina Real Estate Commission bulletin had a disciplinary action taken against an agent for listing a property with a new HVAC. Turns out the HVAC had been rebuilt, but it was not new.
Right.
So it's not just a slap on the wrist. It comes down to a big issue when things are improperly disclosed. So we look. We try to figure out how to read serial numbers, to figure out dates. Sometimes it's, a matter of, again, going back to the HOAs, if there is an HOA or if there's just covenants, codes, and restrictions on the property, what does that entail for the homeowner? What are they restricted against doing?
Right.
And, oh my God, having to sometimes find covenants, codes, restrictions, or old deeded restrictions, pain in the ass, but it's necessary. Especially
in certain counties where they don't make it easy to find those things.
They're not in the searchable database. Yeah. I've had restrictions that were just bizarre. Really bizarre. Land cannot be subdivided, ever. Driveway only has to be, can only go to this road, even though this other road sits right beside the house. And, these restrictions were put in place 60 years ago.
Sure.
when somebody just didn't want anybody to take the land later and change it at all. But, then you have to talk to an attorney about how restrictive are those things.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a nightmare. But yeah, if you fall in love with the house and then you're thinking, don't tell me the bad stuff. Well, we have to tell you the bad stuff sometimes.
Well, it's realistic because a lot of those things mean money at some stage to either fix or to have. I know we were talking about off camera some. If you find a house that maybe is surrounded by a whole bunch of trees, guess what that means? Come fall, somebody's going to have to rake those leaves or get them up, or pay somebody to get them up. Leaves in the gutters. I mean, if you're close to the house, it's just maintenance that you're going to have to take care of. It's at some point.
Yeah. How do you see? And that's a great point. You buy a house in the summer, and then come winter or fall, you haven't thought about what's the difference. And it might not just be the leaves in your yard. It might be the lack of leaves on the trees that were previously a barrier between your house and the highway, blocking out some noise and maybe eyesores.
Your neighbors,
Yeah, are no longer there. So for 4 or 5 months, you have to look at something or hear something that you didn't want to or didn't expect to before.
Right.
Yeah. So many things to take into consideration.
It is. I mean, it's hard to remember or think of all these things, but that's what you get when you have a good agent with you is you can focus on the house, making sure it meets your needs, and we're going to try to do that deeper dive and find any possible thing that could be an issue, good and bad,
right,
going down the road.
Yeah, and and that's a good point to kind of close with, I think, too, is sometimes there's positives that are overlooked. Maybe the house on a scale of 1 to 10 to a buyer initially is a 6 or 7, but if we start looking at the pros, maybe it's a lot of land, maybe it's got additional living space that you just haven't really seen at first, can bump that up to an 8 or a 9. So it's not just that we're looking for the bad things.
Or maybe it's, maybe it has been completely renovated. It's an old house. Maybe it has brand new appliances that come with it. It's especially HVAC and electrical, all of that expensive stuff that you're not going to have to put the money in going forward. Yeah.
Or on a similar note to that too, there's plenty of houses seen with buyers and it's an older house and things are working now, but you don't trust that they're going to be working in the future. And sometimes the sellers have been a little proactive in that, and they've included a home warranty that's already available. So that can get that peace of mind to kind of maybe push over the edge. Test the waters. And home warranties, that's a whole nother discussion that we can have about what do they cover, what do they not. But we've dealt with enough of them to kind of be able to know.
I always recommend, especially once the house is over 7 or 8 years old, to kind of think about it or try to get it from my buyers.
Yeah, and
just for a peace of mind.
Exactly. It can sometimes be fraught with frustrations depending on the company, but it does.
Well, no warranty company is perfect. And I've had people that have had issues trying to file, but I've also had my buyers utilize those that they've received, and some have renewed year after year, and they found peace in that.
Yeah, for every little frustrating story you hear about them, I've got a few others where homeowners have saved $30,000.
Absolutely.
And if that's possible, like you said, on older homes, and you can save the money.
The call out fee for a lot of times, it's very affordable, even just to have somebody come out and look at it. Much
better than the fee to who knows who. Yeah. And the work's going to be guaranteed by the company, the warranty company. So yeah, there's ways to give you more peace of mind if you're in that situation. But all in all, I think the whole takeaway would be we're there to give that peace of mind, one way or another.
Well, probably whether you want it or
not. Whether you want it or not, exactly.
Whether you want it or not, I'm going to give you my feedback. I try to put myself in my client's shoes and be like, okay, for me, this is how I feel about this property. Yeah, exactly. And if there are things that are questionable, I'm going to say to whoever's looking at the house, if it were me to that point, or would I let my mother live here, that kind of thing, in this situation, yes or no, if it's questionable. So
we have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients,
Mhm.
and that means we're looking out for their best interest,
Yep.
both financially, but also just as owners,
Right.
because we don't get new clients if we don't have happy clients in the past. Sometimes we get new clients because people get unhappy, but
That's a whole other
whole
ballpark
episode.
story.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not to scare anybody away
No.
from going to seeing houses,
Mhm.
because it's meant to be a fun experience, and I think we do a good job of making it fun right there. And we'll have to do some on-site little tours here soon, with some of our favorite little places to visit.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, little tease of things to come, maybe. Yep. But as always, if you have questions, reach out to us. Our contact info is down in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, then in the description, it's there for you to reach out to us, leave comments, feedback, and always hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up, the like. It helps us out a lot. You can hit that little bell down there if you're watching on YouTube. Get notifications when we put out the new ones. Every Friday. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Mhm.
And as always, thank you. I am Regan Hildebrand, your co-host at Realtor Regan on social media.
And I am Bridget Quinn, B. Quinn Realtor. As we say, always, we'll see you next time.